There is a subtle yet profound truth that most seekers of transformation overlook, not because it is hidden, but because it is radically simple. The truth is this: manifestation is not a game of effort. It is a dance of coherence. And that misunderstanding between effort and energy is the quiet chasm where so many dreams fall through. We've been taught to strive, to conquer, to perform in order to earn the right to receive. In every institution, from family to school to culture at large, the message is imprinted early. Success is born from hustle, love is maintained through pleasing, safety comes from control. And inevitably, we transfer this conditioning into our spiritual lives. We bring force into our prayers, anxiety into our affirmations, urgency into our visions. We try harder, we speak louder, we repeat more often. But the quantum field, doesn't respond to how hard we work. It responds to how clearly we vibrate. This is the root of the great misunderstanding. The belief that the universe is a vending machine waiting for the right combination of inputs, rather than a living mirror reflecting the state of your being. We assume manifestation is something we do to make reality change. But in truth, manifestation is what reality does when we become energetically aligned with what already exists in potential. It is not a prize we chase. It is a frequency we allow. And it is always responding, not to our wishes, not to our rituals, not to our longing, but to what we are embodying now. To make sense of this requires more than intellect. It requires a shift in perception, a softening of the survival mind, a remembering of the language beyond words. Because the quantum field is not a system of logic, it is a field of consciousness. And consciousness, by its nature, is vibrational. It doesn't analyze, it attunes. It doesn't calculate merit, it harmonizes with presence. Like a tuning fork placed next to another, it vibrates in sympathy with the clearest, most stable signal. That signal is not transmitted through your voice or your willpower. It is transmitted through your being. So if you've ever wondered why your deepest desires remain unfulfilled despite all your spiritual work, the answer may not be that you're doing something wrong. The answer may be that you're doing too much of what isn't needed and too little of what truly matters. You've been trying to manifest by force when the field only listens to coherence. That shift from force to frequency is what this journey is about. Let us begin. There's a quiet agony many people carry on the spiritual path. It's not the pain of not knowing what they want. It's the bewilderment of wanting it so deeply, trying so hard to do everything right, and still watching it slip through their fingers. They meditate. They visualize. They repeat mantras with aching sincerity. Yet the reality doesn't shift. And somewhere inside, a familiar doubt begins to echo. What am I still doing wrong? But what if that question itself is rooted in the wrong premise? What if the problem isn't that you're doing the wrong things, but that you're doing too many things that are simply not required? And what if the true obstacle is not your lack of effort, but your addiction to effort itself? We live in a culture that has worshipped effort for generations. From industrial revolution values to modern productivity culture, effort has become the currency of self-worth. We equate struggle with virtue and ease with laziness. So even when we step into the realm of spiritual creation, we carry that same paradigm with us. We believe that to manifest faster, we must do more. More journaling, more vision boards, more scripting, more affirmations, more techniques. But the quantum doesn't work like that. The quantum isn't impressed by how many hours you meditate or how precisely you recite your intentions. It isn't even responding to your conscious desire. It's responding to your energetic state. And energy doesn't lie. Here's the painful paradox. The more desperately we want something, the more we energetically affirm that we don't yet have it. The more we strive, the more we signal to the field that what we seek is separate from us. This is not because we're bad at manifesting. It's because we're approaching it from the wrong frequency. In the realm of quantum mechanics, everything exists as probability waves until one reality collapses into form. But that collapse isn't governed by willpower. It's governed by coherence. And coherence, the alignment between your intention, your emotion, and your state of being, cannot be faked. It cannot be forced. It must be felt, stabilized, embodied. Most people aren't failing because they lack belief. They're failing because they're broadcasting noise, signals of urgency, frustration, over-control, doubt. And those signals, even when covered in spiritual language, remain chaotic. This is where the wound begins, because when your manifestation doesn't arrive, you assume it must be you, that you are blocked, that you are unworthy, that you must fix something deep within before the field will approve your request. So you begin to search for trauma, for karma, for hidden sabotage. But what if the only thing you need to release isn't your wound, but your tension? What if manifestation is less about resolving your pain and more about releasing your grip? The energy of forcing is subtle. It can wear 1,000 spiritual masks. It can look like dedication, devotion, commitment. But at its core, forcing always carries the frequency of control. And control is rooted in fear. Fear that if you don't keep doing, thinking, managing, the universe might forget you. But the field doesn't forget. It's not waiting to be convinced. It's waiting to receive a stable signal. From a psychological standpoint, this compulsion to force stems from the survival brain. The limbic system interprets uncertainty as threat. So when a desire arises that hasn't yet shown up in physical form, the mind panics. It seeks to resolve the unknown through action, not because that action is effective, but because it soothes the discomfort of uncertainty. We become addicted to movement not because it works, but because it distracts us from feeling powerless. Yet in the quantum realm, surrender is not weakness. Stillness is not passivity. They are the ultimate acts of alignment. When you stop broadcasting urgency and instead stabilize in the frequency of already, the field doesn't have to work harder. It simply stops resisting you because you are no longer resisting it. So no, you're not failing because you're doing it wrong. You're failing because you were never meant to do so much. You were meant to tune, and tuning doesn't require effort. It requires presence, clarity, and the willingness to drop the performance and return to stillness. In that stillness, the field finds something it can finally recognize. You. In the next section, we'll explore exactly what the field is attuning to, because it isn't your words, your rituals, or even your intentions. It's something far more intimate. Let's go deeper. To truly grasp the essence of quantum manifestation, we must begin with a radical truth, one that eludes even the most devoted seekers until they're ready to perceive beyond appearances. The quantum field is not a passive backdrop awaiting your instructions. It is a conscious, living intelligence, and it is listening, not to what you say, not to what you want, but to what you are. This can be difficult to comprehend through the lens of ordinary thinking. We are used to imagining the universe as either mechanical or mystical. Either it runs on laws of physics too complex to master, or it grants our wishes like some benevolent genie if we say the right words. But both of those models miss the central truth. The quantum field is not a machine, and it's not a person. It is awareness itself, embedded in the fabric of existence, operating through the law of vibrational equivalence. To say the field is conscious does not mean it thinks in sentences or makes decisions like a human mind. Its intelligence is subtler than that, more attuned, more precise. It mirrors what is. It reflects the signal of your being with mathematical and spiritual fidelity. If you radiate certainty, it organizes reality around certainty. If you emanate doubt, it offers reflections of uncertainty. It does not judge. It does not filter. It simply tunes. Think of the quantum field like an infinite ocean of potential. Every possible version of reality already exists as energetic information. It is your personal vibration, your internal coherence, that determines which of those waves collapses into your lived experience. This collapse is not random, nor is it based on morality, worthiness, or even how badly you want something. It is based on resonance. Just as two tuning forks vibrate in harmony when placed near each other, the field harmonizes with the signal you emit. This is why your vision board might be filled with images of wealth, love, or healing, yet your reality remains unchanged. Because the field is not responding to your vision board, it is responding to the frequency you hold as you gaze at it. If you're looking at your dreams with longing, it feels the separation. If you're speaking your affirmations with doubt humming underneath, it feels the dissonance. If you're imagining your future with a clenched nervous system, it tunes to the fear, not the fantasy. This is not to say desire is wrong. On the contrary, desire is sacred. It is the soul's way of remembering what is possible. But the gap between desire and embodiment is not bridged through words or will. It is bridged through becoming. And to become, you must first understand what you are right now. What you are is not a thought. It is not even a feeling. It is a field, a composite vibration made up of your beliefs, your nervous system, your emotional tone, your unspoken expectations, your default reactions. It is the energetic signature of your state of being. And that signature is what the quantum field continuously interacts with. Let us take this one step deeper. In neurobiology, there is a concept called predictive coding, the brain's tendency to interpret present experience through the lens of past patterns. In a similar way, the quantum field reflects your future based on the pattern of your present. If your current baseline is mistrust, even subtle, then no matter how eloquently you articulate your goals, the field echoes that mistrust, not as punishment, but as precision. This is why so much of manifestation work becomes exhausting. People spend hours rehearsing a future they don't actually trust. They speak in the language of abundance, but embody the vibration of lack. They declare worthiness while bracing for disappointment. They try to hack the field with scripts and sequences, not realizing the field is not impressed by surface declarations. It is tuned to the soul beneath them. To step into true manifestation is to step into spiritual honesty. Not performative positivity, not spiritual bypass, but raw, transparent coherence. It is to say, I am no longer sending mixed signals. I am ready to live in alignment with what I ask for. Not someday, not when it's safe, but now. And here is where the shift begins. Not through doing more, but through becoming clearer. The field doesn't need to be chased. It doesn't require persuasion. It simply waits for resonance. When your vibration becomes stable, non-contradictory, and attuned to the reality you say you desire, the field collapses that timeline into form, not as a reward, but as a natural result. So if the quantum field is conscious, and it is, then the most powerful thing you can ever offer it is not your words, but your frequency. Because in that frequency, it hears the truth of who you've decided to become. In the next section, we'll explore how that frequency becomes scrambled, and why most people, even with the right intentions, are transmitting signals of chaos instead of clarity. Let's move deeper into the heart of coherence. If the quantum field mirrors what you are, not in thought, but in vibration, then the most important question you can ask is not, what do I want, but what am I broadcasting? And for most people, the answer is far more fragmented than they realize. Because while the conscious mind may be projecting one desire, the deeper energy system is often emitting another. One shaped by fear, scarcity, and unconscious tension. This is where chaos begins, not in the absence of vision, but in the lack of coherence. To understand coherence, we must first understand its opposite. Chaos, in energetic terms, is not drama or disaster. It is vibrational dissonance, the collision of competing frequencies within you. It happens when your desire says yes, but your nervous system whispers no. It happens when you affirm abundance while subtly expecting disappointment. It happens when you visualize the outcome, but continue checking, doubting, and chasing it every few hours. These contradictions may seem small, but in the quantum realm, they matter immensely. The quantum field doesn't interpret your life the way a therapist would. It doesn't read between lines or reward effort. It responds to signal clarity, not emotional intention. If your signal is muddy, scattered, or overloaded with internal conflict, the field doesn't know what to collapse. Not because you are unworthy, not because you're doing it wrong, but because you're vibrating contradiction, and contradiction creates confusion. Consider what happens when you tune a radio. If the dial is even slightly off from the station, you don't get the music, you get static. The same is true for manifestation. When your frequency is misaligned, the result is distortion. Not because you lack talent or power, but because clarity has been compromised by inner noise. And most of that noise originates from fear. Fear has many disguises. It can dress itself as ambition, as hustle, as discipline. But beneath all of it lies one persistent message. I don't trust it's coming. And the moment that belief takes hold, your actions become an effort to compensate for that lack of trust. You may speak affirmations aloud, but the tone is tight. You may sit in meditation, but underneath is a restless checking for results. You may say you surrender, but your breath is shallow and your body is braced. The field, ever attuned, picks up the nervous undercurrent, and it responds not to your words, but to the tone. Tone is everything in quantum creation. Not tone as in vocal pitch, but as in vibrational texture. It is the quality of your inner space. Is it open or clenched, spacious or crowded, soft or striving? The field doesn't hear your affirmation. It feels the tone underneath it. If that tone is stable, relaxed, coherent, it becomes readable. But if that tone is layered with attachment, anxiety, or urgency, it becomes scrambled. You may still manifest something, but not what you truly want. More often, you manifest delay, confusion, or near misses, because the signal was unclear. This is not punishment, it is precision. The field is not resisting you, it is reflecting you, and it is doing so with perfect fidelity. That is the spiritual rigor of this path. There is no loophole in consciousness. You can only receive what you are vibrationally able to hold. Now let's pause here, because this understanding can feel both liberating and confronting. Liberating because it means you are never truly stuck, only misaligned, and confronting because it requires radical self-honesty. You cannot outsource this process. You cannot pretend coherence. You must become it. Psychologically, this mirrors the journey from survival to presence. Most people live in a low-grade survival mode, scanning for danger, anticipating rejection, bracing for disappointment. That state creates shallow breath, muscular tension, compulsive thinking, all of which generate static in the signal. Even if you are practicing manifestation techniques, if your body and nervous system are still in a state of defense, your frequency remains fragmented. But coherence begins when you return to safety within yourself. Not external safety, but internal congruence. When your body, heart, and mind speak the same language, a hum of resonance forms. It's quiet but unmistakable. It doesn't come from performance, it comes from presence. This is not something you can fake for 5 minutes in a morning ritual. It's a vibrational posture, held throughout your day, your choices, your interactions. When you are coherent, you don't need to shout your desires into the universe. Your frequency becomes its own declaration. You don't need to chase signs because the field already feels your readiness. You don't need to manage the outcome because your energy is already vibrating as if the outcome is inevitable. And this, perhaps, is the deepest layer of coherence. The shift from chasing what you want to embodying who you are when you already have it. That energetic identity becomes the signal. The field doesn't have to be convinced, it simply responds. So if your manifestations feel delayed, distorted, or erratic, ask not what you're doing wrong. Ask what you're still doing out of fear. Ask what frequency you're still leaking through your grasping, your proving, your performing. And ask what might happen if instead you tune back into stillness. In the next section, we'll explore how this coherence is cultivated, not through performance or ritual, but through the deep art of regulation. Not just nervous system regulation in the clinical sense, but vibrational regulation in its purest form. Let's continue. You've probably heard the phrase, energy flows where attention goes, but that's only part of the story. In quantum manifestation, energy flows where stability holds. Because in the realm of frequency, movement alone is not what creates, resonance is. And resonance can only occur when your signal is not just momentarily aligned, but sustained, regulated, and unwavering beneath the surface of your mind. That's the real secret. You don't manifest by holding a thought, you manifest by holding a frequency, and that's a very different kind of mastery. Let's begin by demystifying regulation. In the context of quantum creation, regulation is not simply calming your emotions or relaxing your breath, though those practices help. Regulation is the ability to maintain a coherent vibrational tone even as life moves around you. It is the spiritual stability that allows your energy to remain readable to the field no matter what the outer conditions are doing. Because manifestation doesn't happen in your excitement, it happens in your consistency. Most people approach manifestation like a spark, a flash of clarity, a rush of inspiration, a powerful meditation. And for a moment, their energy aligns. The field hears them. A door opens. Synchronicities ripple. But then, life happens. A delay arises. A doubt creeps in. An expectation isn't met. And with that shift, their signal destabilizes. The resonance breaks, and the potential that had begun to take shape collapses back into probability. Not because the dream was wrong, not because the field rejected them, but because the frequency became unreadable again. This cycle plays out endlessly: alignment, collapse, repeat. Not because we lack discipline, but because we have misunderstood where real creation begins. It doesn't begin in action, it begins in stability. And that stability is cultivated not through force, but through the subtle art of staying home in your energy. It is, as Dr. Joe Dispenza teaches, moving from a survival-based nervous system into one of creation, not reacting to life, but creating from within it. In neurobiology, we know that the brain is a prediction machine. It constantly compares the present to the past and anticipates what's coming next. That function keeps us safe, but it also traps us. Because the moment we start to live from memory, emotional or cognitive, we begin to recreate the past through our expectations. Even when we long for a new reality, we subconsciously prepare for the old one. That preparation becomes vibration, and vibration becomes the message. This is why emotional regulation is not just self-care, it's spiritual precision. Because when you remain internally stable, when your body no longer flinches in the absence of proof, when your breath remains open in the silence between manifestations, you're sending a very different message to the field. You're saying, I'm not performing belief, I am belief. I'm not hoping for change, I am the change. I'm not wishing to receive, I'm broadcasting readiness. True regulation means your energy doesn't panic when the outer evidence goes quiet. It means you can stay anchored in the vibration of already, even when the timeline seems still. Because coherence doesn't come from what's happening around you. It comes from how deeply you've chosen to reside in the version of you who already knows. To illustrate this, imagine your vibration as an instrument, a violin string. When tuned correctly, it plays a clean note. The field hears that note and begins to harmonize. But if you pluck it once, then let it drift out of tune while you anxiously wait for the echo, the harmony fades. That's what most people do. They strike the chord during a powerful meditation or ritual, then fall back into misalignment while waiting for confirmation. But the field doesn't respond to the strike, it responds to the sustained tone. So how do we sustain it? Not through force, not through pretending, but through presence. Presence is the master regulator of energy. When you are truly present, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually, you become available to what already exists. You stop projecting your fears into the future. You stop rehearsing your limitations. You stop tuning into timelines that don't reflect your truth. In that stillness, the signal becomes clear. The transmission stabilizes. And the field, always conscious, always listening, responds. This doesn't mean you never feel doubt. It means you no longer collapse into it. It doesn't mean you avoid discomfort. It means you meet it without changing your frequency. It means you breathe with the moment instead of bracing against it. That is the maturity of manifestation, not the high of spiritual excitement, but the groundedness of energetic sovereignty. You stop broadcasting need. You stop sending the field mixed signals. You become a clear vessel, calm, congruent, attuned. And from that space, life begins to organize itself around your steadiness. Not because the field finally gives you what you asked for, but because it no longer has a reason to withhold. There is no resistance left. There is only resonance. And resonance is the signature of arrival. In the next section, we'll explore what happens when that resonance begins to waver. Specifically, the hidden moment when manifestation is almost complete, but collapses. We'll examine why 99% isn't enough and how your signal breaks down when you're closest to receiving. Let's walk into the space between almost and arrival. There's a moment in every manifestation journey that feels both miraculous and maddening. You've aligned. You've felt the shift. Synchronicities begin to flicker in your field. You catch glimpses of the timeline you've been tuning to. Opportunities that almost unfold. Conversations that nearly confirm what you know is coming. You sense it in your bones. It's close. So close you can feel its breath. And then, nothing. The energy goes quiet. The movement slows. The universe, once echoing your signal, seems to go still. And you begin to wonder, did I lose it? Was I wrong? Did I imagine the whole thing? This is the hidden architecture of resistance. Not the obvious resistance we associate with doubt or disbelief, but the subtle, almost imperceptible breakdown that happens in the final stretch. The 1% where our frequency slips, just enough to cause the entire timeline to dissolve. It is here at 99% that the old self makes its final plea to survive. Because as you stand at the threshold of transformation, your system senses the impending death of a familiar identity. Not consciously, perhaps, but energetically, the body knows. The ego, constructed to keep you safe inside predictable realities, begins to resist the unknown. Not because it hates your desire, but because it fears its implications. Every desire carries with it a consequence of becoming. To receive a new life, you must leave something of the old behind. A way of thinking, a way of waiting, a posture of needing. And often it is not the desire itself we fear, it is the version of us we would have to become to sustain it. That version may be unfamiliar, unpracticed, unverified by our history. And so, just as the field prepares to collapse our intention into form, our signal destabilizes. We begin broadcasting doubt through the language of subtle control. It sounds like, maybe I need to visualize again. Maybe I missed a sign. Maybe I should do one more technique. But underneath it all, the vibration says, I don't trust this is happening. This is the precise moment when presence matters most. Because the closer the reality gets, the more crucial your coherence becomes. The quantum field is not testing you. It's responding to your refinement. When your frequency shifts by even a fraction, the field reflects that shift without judgment. If your vibration contracts into fear at the last moment, the energy does not punish you. It simply mirrors your retreat. This is why manifestation isn't about bursts of faith. It's about sustained embodiment. And embodiment requires energetic endurance, not in the sense of strain, but in the sense of continuity. Can you remain the version of you who has already received, even as nothing external validates it yet? Can you remain clear even when the evidence disappears? That is the true initiation. That is where the threshold becomes transformation. In neuroscience, we know that the brain has a bias toward prediction. It needs confirmation to feel safe. So when something we deeply desire begins to arrive, but hasn't yet appeared in physical form, the brain perceives danger in the ambiguity. The nervous system tightens. The mind begins its compulsive checking. And if we are not anchored in presence, we follow that old survival loop, shifting from creation to compensation, from trust to interference. But the field does not respond to your effort. It responds to your frequency. And when your frequency wavers, the manifestation doesn't vanish. It simply pauses, hovering in the space of almost, waiting for you to stabilize again. This is the sacred paradox. The final stage of manifestation often demands the deepest surrender. Not surrender as passivity, but as vibrational clarity. The willingness to no longer grasp, the courage to no longer prove, the strength to no longer chase. You don't collapse the quantum field through demand. You collapse it through coherence. And coherence at 99% means you are no longer relying on conditions to maintain your state. You have become the condition. This shift is subtle but profound. When your desire becomes your baseline vibration, you stop relating to it as something outside of you. You no longer say, it's coming. You say, I'm already inside it. And that statement is not rhetorical. It's not spiritual performance. It is a cellular, energetic truth. The field recognizes that resonance not as wishful thinking, but as an arrival code, and it responds. So if you've ever felt that mysterious stall, if you've ever wondered why something felt inevitable, only to dissolve before your eyes, know this: it wasn't a failure. It was a moment of fragile signal, a call not to do more, but to become stiller, not to try harder, but to stabilize deeper. You didn't lose your manifestation. You simply stepped out of coherence long enough for the field to wait. And the field is always waiting, not with judgment, with perfect neutrality, for you to return to your truest signal, not the one you perform, but the one you become. In the next section, we'll unravel one of the most misunderstood ideas in all of quantum manifestation: letting go. You'll see why letting go is not the end of desire. It's the beginning of alignment. Let's keep walking. At some point on the path of conscious creation, we all encounter the teaching, let it go. And for many, this advice feels like a contradiction, even a betrayal of the desire itself. After all, how can you hold a vision with clarity, intention, and emotional intensity, and then be told to release it? Doesn't letting go mean giving up? Doesn't it mean lowering your frequency of desire? Doesn't it signal to the universe that you're no longer serious about what you asked for? Not at all. This is where language fails, and vibration must speak louder than words. Because true letting go is not abandonment, it is refinement. It is not a withdrawal of desire, it is the release of distortion. It is not apathy, it is the purification of your frequency so that only the signal of resonance remains. To let go in the quantum sense is to remove your hands from the control panel of reality. It is to stop managing the when, the how, the what if. It is to release the mental grip that attempts to direct the universe according to the blueprint of your fears. And most importantly, it is to stop projecting your unworthiness onto the timeline of your manifestations. When we refuse to let go, we are often not holding the vision. We are holding the fear that it won't happen. Our grasp is not an act of love, but of distrust. We rehearse scenarios, chase signs, revisualize from a place of anxiety, not alignment. And in doing so, we clutter the field with noise. We layer the clear tone of resonance with static from our conditioned mind. And the quantum field, exact and uncorrupted, mirrors that confusion back to us. Not because we're doing it wrong, but because we're still doing too much. Letting go, then, is not the rejection of desire. It is the embodiment of trust. It is the moment your energy stops asking and begins radiating. It is the vibration that says, I no longer need this to happen to feel whole. I no longer require external confirmation to remain aligned. I already carry the tone of fulfillment within me, and that is enough. And paradoxically, it is in that moment of emotional neutrality, of peaceful certainty, that the field begins to move most powerfully. To understand this deeper, we must look to both spiritual and scientific wisdom. Abraham Hicks calls it releasing the oars, stopping the upstream struggle and allowing the current to carry you. Neville Goddard called it assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled. And in neuroscience, this correlates to the shift from sympathetic to parasympathetic dominance, the transition from fight or flight into rest, restore, and receptivity. When you let go, your body enters coherence. Your field becomes open. Your signal becomes clean. But make no mistake, letting go is not a passive act. It is one of the most energetically potent states you can enter. It requires tremendous maturity to stand in the space of the unknown and not flinch. It requires devotion, not to the outcome, but to your alignment. It requires a decision, not to control reality, but to trust that resonance is already in motion. Here's the paradox most people miss. The version of you who already has what you want isn't holding on to the outcome. They're not checking the calendar. They're not refreshing the energy. They're not grasping for signs. They are living from a center that no longer depends on proof. And so, to align with that version, you must stop performing desire and begin inhabiting certainty. Letting go feels like this. You walk through your day no longer wondering if. You begin responding as though the shift has already occurred. You speak without convincing. You breathe without waiting. You move without bracing. You still hold the vision, but you no longer hold your breath. You've become compatible with the reality you asked for, and now your signal is so coherent that the field no longer questions what to reflect. That is the precision of alignment. It is not loud, it is not effortful, it is not dramatic, it is quiet, calm, and internally complete. You don't announce you're letting go, you live it. You don't perform surrender. You become the embodiment of ease, and in doing so, you stop chasing the future and allow the future to collapse into your present. From that space, what you manifest no longer feels like a reward. It feels like a match. It no longer arrives as a miracle. It arrives as an obvious, inevitable unfolding. Because the version of you who let go didn't stop wanting. They simply stopped waiting. They stopped doubting. They stopped managing. So no, letting go is not giving up. It's giving over. It's saying, I trust the intelligence of the field more than I trust the urgency of my mind. It's choosing alignment over attachment, and it's walking with a kind of energetic grace that tells the universe, I'm ready now, not because I've figured it all out, but because I've stopped needing to. In the next section, we'll explore how manifestation actually arrives, not as a lightning bolt, but as a timeline you gently shift into, not through force, but through frequency. Let's step into that next level awareness together. Most people imagine manifestation as a dramatic arrival, a sudden miracle that bursts through the fabric of reality and changes everything overnight. They wait for signs, expect divine fireworks, and look for evidence that something extraordinary is happening. But the truth is far more subtle, far more elegant. In the quantum field, manifestation doesn't descend from the sky with trumpets. It arrives quietly, often unnoticed at first, not because it's insignificant, but because you've already become the version of yourself who lives inside it. This is one of the great paradoxes of conscious creation. By the time it shows up, it no longer feels like a shock. It feels natural, obvious, like breathing. Why? Because manifestation doesn't come to those who are waiting. It comes to those who have stopped needing. It comes to those who have stabilized in the vibration of already, so completely that when the desire arrives, it finds no resistance, no fanfare, no disbelief, only resonance. In this way, receiving is not an act. It is not a technique. It is a state of being. And that state is cultivated not through outer effort, but through inner allowing. You do not prepare to receive by trying harder. You prepare by softening, by grounding, by becoming the version of you who would see the desire not as a rescue, but as a reflection of who you already are. Think of a radio station. You don't have to build the music. It already exists in frequency. You simply have to tune into the exact band of energy where it's playing. And when you do, the music emerges. Not because it was created in that moment, but because your receiver was finally clear enough to let it in. In the quantum field, receiving works the same way. There is nothing you are trying to pull in from the outside. All possibilities already exist. Every timeline, every experience, every outcome. You are not attracting them. You are attuning to them. And attunement is a vibrational posture, not a mental one. This is why forced effort creates interference. The moment you begin grasping, pushing, adjusting, you step out of the receiving state and back into the controlling state. You contract. You send signals of lack, urgency, and mistrust. And the field, exact and sensitive, mirrors that contraction with delay or distortion, not because it's withholding, but because it cannot collapse a timeline into coherence if the signal keeps shifting. So what does receiving feel like? It feels like already. Not in imagination, but in energy. It feels like a subtle shift where your breath deepens, your shoulders drop, and your system no longer waits for the evidence to justify its peace. It feels like walking through your day as if the manifestation is no longer pending, but present. It's the absence of proving, the absence of needing, the absence of urgency. Not because you've given up, but because you've come home to a new baseline, inner sufficiency. Psychologically, this is a state of regulated awareness. Your nervous system is no longer hypervigilant. Your mind is no longer grasping for control. Your identity is no longer entangled with absence. You are no longer performing alignment. You are simply being it. And that shift from performance to presence is where the manifestation enters. It doesn't need a crescendo. It doesn't need to shout. Because when you've become the person who already lives inside the timeline, the reality unfolds around you without effort. The people, conversations, ideas, and opportunities that match your new signature begin to appear. Not because you chase them, but because your coherence created gravitational resonance. You didn't chase the outcome. You became the space in which it could land. This is why true manifestation is quiet. It slips in through the cracks of your stillness. It rides on the back of your trust. It shows up in moments that feel so natural, you almost forget to call them miracles. And that's the point. When you are truly coherent, the outcome is no longer the center of your attention. It's simply the natural outpicturing of who you've decided to be. And that decision, deep, vibrational, and unshakable, is what collapses potential into form. You didn't beg for it. You didn't force it. You tuned into it. You trusted the tone. You held the note, and the field, conscious and exact, did the rest. So if you're still waiting for the fireworks, pause, breathe, look around. You might already be inside the timeline that once felt so far away. You might already be walking through a reality that looks quiet on the surface, but is encoded with your new vibration. Receiving doesn't always feel like arrival. It often feels like familiarity. Not because nothing changed, but because you changed before the outer world had a chance to catch up. And that's the deeper secret of manifestation. You receive not when the universe grants your wish, but when the universe no longer needs to, because your being has already confirmed the transmission. In the next section, we'll explore the final evolution of coherence, not just as a momentary vibration, but as a lived identity. We'll walk into the sacred space where alignment becomes embodiment, and you stop performing the version of you who has arrived and start living as them. Let's continue. There comes a point in every spiritual journey where the performance of belief must give way to the embodiment of truth. A moment where you stop affirming your worthiness and begin living from it. Where you stop trying to convince the field that you're ready and begin behaving like someone who has already arrived. This is the threshold between alignment and embodiment, between visualizing your future and becoming the frequency that future requires. Most people remain trapped in the performance stage without realizing it. They say the affirmations. They create the vision boards. They track the signs. They speak of trust, of surrender, of divine timing. But underneath, they are still broadcasting the vibration of proving, of trying, of hoping the universe is listening. Their rituals are sincere, but they are also signals of separation. Because when you try to align, you're already admitting you are not yet it. When you practice trust, you often signal that trust has not yet rooted itself in your being. Embodiment is the quiet revolution where all of that drops away. It is the moment your identity stops echoing the frequency of becoming and begins to emit the frequency of being. And in that shift, everything changes, not just in your energy, but in how life begins to respond. Because the quantum field, conscious and exact, mirrors not your desire, but your vibration. And the most powerful vibration is one that no longer waits for permission. To embody is to stop asking the field for confirmation and start being the confirmation. Not as a tactic, but as a way of existing. You no longer speak from the space of, it's coming. You speak from the space of, this is who I am now. You don't walk with the energy of expectation. You walk with the energy of memory, because in your field it has already happened. Your body already knows. Your system already recognizes the signature of arrival. This is not arrogance, this is resonance. And it is only available when you have stopped measuring your progress through the lens of time. Because the moment you collapse your energy into still waiting, almost there, not yet, the field reflects exactly that. A timeline of almost, a vibration of delay. But when you embody the reality, when you begin thinking, speaking, and moving like someone who is already living it, your timeline stops drifting. It locks, and the manifestation begins to materialize. Not through effort, but through inevitability. Let us speak plainly. You cannot become the version of you who receives the life you want while clinging to the habits, reactions, and emotional set points of your past. The field isn't waiting for more rituals. It's waiting for you, the real, regulated, radiant version of you who has stopped doubting your place in the timeline you desire. The version who no longer self-negotiates, who no longer asks if it's working, who no longer relies on outer evidence to feel secure. That version doesn't manifest through force. They manifest through embodiment, and embodiment at its essence is nervous system safety. It is the ability to hold the frequency of your chosen reality without collapsing when reality doesn't yet confirm it. It is emotional maturity. It is energetic sovereignty. It is the deep, unwavering presence of someone who no longer argues with the now, because they know the now is the launch pad of everything. This is where many seekers become unstuck. They've visualized. They've felt the feeling. They've had glimpses of alignment. But because they never stabilized into that version of self, they drift back into effort. They rehearse the old loops. They try again. And each time they try, they step further away from the timeline that only responds to being. Embodiment doesn't mean you stop growing. It means your growth is no longer an audition. It means you're no longer performing your worthiness. You are no longer attempting to earn what you desire through spiritual merit. You are simply holding the vibration because it feels true, because it feels like home, not because it guarantees the result. And that, ironically, is what draws the result to you faster. Because you are no longer pushing, you are no longer interfering, you are no longer contradicting the timeline with doubt signals. You are clear, clean, settled. You've become the frequency. And once you become the frequency, life begins to organize itself to match you. Not because you demanded it, but because the field had no other option. This is the final phase of quantum creation. Not effort, but embodiment. Not strategy, but state. And it's available to you the moment you stop waiting to become and start remembering that you already are. You already hold the vibration of the version who receives. You already know the resonance of inner peace. You already carry the tone of coherence. The only question is, will you trust that enough to stop proving? Because when you do, the signal becomes irresistible. Not loud, not flashy, just unmistakably stable. And in that stability, the field finds you. Not as a seeker, but as a signal. In the next section, we'll bring this into the realm of sovereignty, what it truly means to stop seeking permission from the universe, and instead reclaim your power as the conscious architect of your timeline. Let's go deeper. There is a moment on this journey where you no longer look outward for reassurance, where the rituals, the signs, and the external confirmations begin to fade into the background. Not because you've become indifferent, but because something deeper has anchored inside you, a knowing, a stillness, a steady remembrance that you were never meant to force your way into alignment. You were meant to remember your way home to it. This is the return to sovereignty, not sovereignty as control over others or mastery over circumstances, but sovereignty as energetic authority over your own vibration. It is the remembrance that your power has never lived in how hard you try, how perfectly you perform, or how eloquently you state your desires. Your power lives in the clarity of your coherence, in the still-rooted frequency that says, I know who I am, even when the evidence has not yet arrived. For so long, we've been conditioned to believe that spiritual mastery looks like effort, that if we're not manifesting, we must not be doing enough. So we double down. We chase new methods. We seek more information. We apply more pressure. But what if that very pressure is the barrier? What if trying harder is not the bridge, but the block? Because the truth is, the quantum field doesn't respond to pressure. It doesn't respond to overwhelm or urgency or emotional desperation. It doesn't respond to a frequency that says, I'm not okay until this happens. That kind of signal sends one clear message. I don't trust the field. And the field, precise and non-judgmental, reflects that mistrust in the form of stagnation, confusion, or delay. Sovereignty is the end of that cycle. It is the reclamation of your vibration from the grip of performance. It is the decision to no longer live in reactive mode, waiting for life to confirm your worth, but to become the initiator of your experience through pure alignment. When you stand in sovereignty, you no longer ask, is it working? You ask, am I coherent? Because you understand that the answer has never been out there. It has always been in the signal you are transmitting. In practical terms, sovereignty looks like inner steadiness. It looks like trusting your resonance more than the metrics. It looks like knowing that your frequency is creating timelines long before your mind can catch up. And so, instead of adjusting your energy based on what the outer world is doing, you adjust your focus inward. You nurture your own field. You regulate your own nervous system. You become the authority of your own vibration, and that changes everything. This isn't spiritual bypass. It's spiritual maturity. It's the courage to sit in uncertainty without collapsing. It's the willingness to remain calm in the space where nothing appears to be moving, because you know that the field never stops listening. You know that your reality is not delayed because of lack, but because of alignment precision. You know that the universe isn't testing you. It's waiting for a stable signal. And you choose to become that signal, not because you're forcing it, but because it's who you are now. There's a deeper kind of power that comes alive when you stop begging. A magnetic stillness that emerges when you no longer make your desires responsible for your identity. That's when you become untouchable, not in arrogance, but in clarity. You no longer collapse when things seem quiet. You no longer scramble when timelines stretch. You no longer interpret silence as rejection. You understand that creation happens in the invisible long before it appears in the visible, and you make peace with the mystery. That peace is sovereignty. It is the end of spiritual dependency and the beginning of energetic mastery. You stop looking to astrology, oracles, or outcomes to tell you what's coming. You begin to listen to your own field. And if your field says yes, you walk forward, even if nothing outside you has shifted yet. You move not because the path is confirmed, but because your frequency already occupies the destination. This is what ancient mystics, quantum scientists, and spiritual visionaries have all hinted at in different languages. Not that you must force the universe into compliance, but that you must match it, that you must remember your role, not as a passive recipient, but as a conscious co-creator. The field is not separate from you. You are the field, localized, embodied, intelligent. And when you reclaim that identity, you no longer ask for permission. You radiate coherence. You signal readiness. You live as the timeline rather than chase it. So if you feel weary, exhausted from the constant effort to manifest, pause, take a breath, not to give up, but to give over, to return, to come back to the place where all manifestation begins. Not in your to-do list, but in your tone. Not in your effort, but in your frequency. Not in your timeline, but in your truth. In the final section, we'll bring all of this together, not as a technique to apply, but as a frequency to embody. We'll complete the journey not by reaching for more, but by settling into the version of you who no longer seeks, because they've remembered that they are already it. Let's come home. This is where it all leads, not to a finish line, but to a return. A return not to who you were, but to who you've always been beneath the noise, the signal itself, the one who no longer waits to be chosen, because they remember they are already aligned. The one who no longer reaches for a distant reality because they are already vibrating inside it. The one who has stopped performing spirituality and started living coherence. You are not here to chase timelines. You are here to emit them. You are not here to earn your manifestations. You are here to harmonize with the version of you who already lives in the frequency where those manifestations exist. That version is not a future goal. It is a present decision. Becoming the signal means you no longer view reality as a negotiation. You stop sending the field a mixed broadcast, half certainty, half doubt, hoping it will decipher your confusion and send you what you want. Instead, you offer a pure transmission, steady, stable, quiet, and the field, exact and intelligent, reflects it with mathematical precision. Because the field is not judging you. It is not testing you. It is simply mirroring what you are. This is the simplicity on the other side of all the effort. Once you stop controlling, the field stops resisting. Once you stop chasing, the timeline begins arriving. Not because your effort was finally enough, but because your vibration was finally readable. That's the real secret. You don't manifest through dominance. You manifest through clarity, through steadiness, through becoming unshakable in your frequency, not through force, but through truth. That truth isn't loud. It doesn't try to convince. It doesn't ask for applause. It simply is. And when you align with it, not as a visitor, but as a resident, your life begins to organize itself around you. The manifestations don't come as rewards. They come as reflections, the opportunities, the conversations, the synchronicities. They don't arrive to prove anything. They arrive because they finally recognize you. You are no longer the seeker. You are no longer the student endlessly looking for the next step, the next technique, the next sign to validate your becoming. You are the signal. You are the one the field is listening to. And your only task now is to stay coherent long enough for the reality to crystallize. This doesn't mean perfection. It means consistency. It means the quiet decision to return to your alignment every time the old self tries to pull you back into striving. It means meeting discomfort with presence, meeting delay with calm, meeting silence with trust, because your manifestation is not a test of your worth. It's a mirror of your embodiment. When Neville Goddard said, "Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled," he wasn't suggesting a momentary trick of the mind. He was describing a permanent shift in identity. He was describing embodiment. And when Abraham Hicks spoke of the art of allowing, they weren't telling you to wait passively. They were inviting you to surrender your resistance, to stop trying to control the manifestation and start living as the version of you who no longer needs to. This is the quantum path. Not a road you walk with your feet, but a vibration you step into with your being. A timeline you enter by frequency, not by effort. And once you're inside it, you'll know. Not because something huge and loud announces it, but because nothing inside you is waiting anymore. The tension is gone, the grasping dissolves, the breath deepens. You are already it. Oh, ask yourself as you close this chapter, what am I still holding on to that is rooted in proving? Where am I still trying to perform belief instead of living from it? And what would change today if I stopped transmitting contradiction and started transmitting coherence? Let the answer not be something you write down. Let it be something you live. Because mastery is not about learning one more thing. It's about remembering what you already are and staying there long enough for the world to reflect it back. If this journey has touched something in you, if something softened, shifted, or resonated, then stay connected. Not because you need more answers, but because you're ready to keep walking at the level of frequency where truth lives, where creation flows without forcing, where coherence is the new baseline. And if you're ready to keep embodying this work, take one aligned breath, drop the performance, return to your signal, and say it not to ask but to confirm, I am already it, because you are. If this message stirred something inside you, if you felt yourself remembering instead of just learning, then don't walk this frequency alone. Subscribe to the channel so this vibration keeps meeting you where you are. Like the video if this aligned with your truth. Share it with someone who is ready to shift not through force but through coherence. And turn on the bell to stay in resonance as we keep expanding into deeper layers of becoming. You're not here to chase, you're here to remember. Let's keep walking together.